Breaking. Multiple dangerous weather systems are converging on eastern Australia in what meteorologists are calling an unprecedented event. This is a developing story as forecast models reveal coordinated severe weather threats targeting millions of Australians simultaneously. Major population centres from Brisbane to Sydney are now under threat from weather patterns that developed faster than initially predicted. This is breaking weather news you need to know immediately. Hit that like button and share this critical information now. 3 separate weather crises are developing simultaneously, creating the most complex forecast situation of the season. This is developing news coverage of Australia's weather emergency. If you're new here, subscribe immediately for breaking updates. Breaking. Community response has been overwhelming. Zero negative feedback shows Australians are taking these threats seriously. This unprecedented community engagement reflects the gravity of the developing weather situation across eastern Australia. Here's the latest on this rapidly developing weather emergency affecting major Australian population centres. Breaking. Severe thunderstorm development across Queensland is exceeding forecast models with dangerous intensification rates. Developing. Tropical system organisation in the Coral Sea is accelerating beyond initial predictions with concerning implications. Latest. Third weather system offshore from southeast Queensland is showing unexpected strengthening patterns. Urgent update for Brisbane, Gold Coast and northern New South Wales residents as weather threats intensify rapidly. Breaking news. Thunderstorm activity across central New South Wales is currently exceeding warning criteria established this morning. Developing situation. Storm organisation is progressing faster than forecast models predicted with dangerous implications for populated areas. Latest reports. Orange, Dubbo and Parkes are experiencing severe weather conditions that arrived ahead of schedule. Breaking. Weather monitoring networks are recording atmospheric changes that exceed established warning thresholds. Urgent forecast update. Tomorrow's weather threat to Western Queensland has been upgraded to extreme danger levels. Breaking news. Cunnamulla and Charleville are now in the path of potentially catastrophic straight-line wind development. Latest analysis. Wind speed projections have been revised upward, with structural damage now considered likely. Developing emergency. Rural communities are being advised to implement immediate protective measures as conditions deteriorate. Breaking. Emergency services are repositioning resources based on rapidly evolving weather threat assessments. Urgent update. Friday's severe weather threat has been expanded to include densely populated areas previously considered safe. Breaking news. Warwick area now faces significant hail and wind threats that could cause widespread property damage. Latest development. Flash flooding potential across the granite belt has been elevated to dangerous levels. Breaking. Atmospheric energy measurements are reaching levels that meteorologists describe as extremely dangerous. Urgent analysis. CAPE values of 2,500 joules per kilogram represent atmospheric conditions capable of producing violent storms. Breaking development. Wind shear patterns are now optimal for supercell formation with tornado potential. Latest update. Multiple severe weather hazards are now forecast to develop simultaneously across the region. Breaking news. Brisbane weather threat assessment has been revised as conditions become less predictable. Developing situation. Coastal areas previously considered safe are now under increased weather threat monitoring. This is breaking news. The tropical weather situation has escalated beyond initial emergency planning assumptions. Urgent development. Ex-tropical cyclone Koji's remnants are reorganizing faster than any computer model predicted. Breaking. Satellite analysis reveals atmospheric organization patterns that indicate rapid tropical development is imminent. Latest news. Both major international forecast models have simultaneously upgraded threat levels for tropical redevelopment. Urgent alert. Ocean temperature analysis shows conditions are now optimal for explosive tropical intensification. Breaking development. Far North Queensland communities are being advised to begin evacuation planning immediately. Latest analysis. Dual tropical threat scenario now involves both Australian coasts with simultaneous development possible. Breaking news. Cairns, Townsville and coastal communities face flood threats that exceed current emergency response capabilities. Urgent update. Rainfall projections have been revised upward to 200 to 400 millimetres in 48 hours for vulnerable coastal areas. Developing crisis. Saturated catchments mean additional rainfall will create immediate, life-threatening flooding conditions. Breaking news coverage now moves to location-specific threat assessments for major Australian cities. Urgent Sydney update. Thunderstorm threat level has been elevated, with particular danger northwest through Hunter regions. Breaking news. Blue Mountains areas face elevated flash flooding risk as storm systems approach from multiple directions. Melbourne Situation Report. Current stability maintained, but emergency services monitoring rapid regional weather deterioration. Latest Melbourne analysis. Emergency management reviewing resource deployment to assist other threatened capitals. Breaking Brisbane update. Heat and humidity levels are creating dangerous conditions for power outage scenarios. Urgent Brisbane advisory. Critical infrastructure vulnerability increases as atmospheric instability builds rapidly. Breaking Perth development. Cyclone threat assessment has been elevated for the January 20th period. Latest Perth analysis. Western Australia Emergency Services are activating additional response protocols. Adelaide status report. Current safety conditions continue, but authorities monitoring potential interstate emergency assistance requirements. Breaking Darwin update. Monsoon intensification is exceeding seasonal predictions with widespread impact potential. This is breaking news. The speed of atmospheric deterioration is exceeding all emergency planning timelines. Urgent development. Overnight weather analysis reveals conditions are changing faster than communities can implement protection. Breaking analysis. Temperature contrast zones are creating atmospheric instability that threatens multiple population centers. Latest development. Air mass collision zones are forecast to create rapid onset severe weather with minimal warning time. Breaking news. Temperature gradient analysis shows 40 to 50 degree differences, creating explosive atmospheric conditions. Urgent agricultural alert. Crop and livestock threats are escalating as weather systems target rural communities. Breaking tourism advisory. Popular destinations face closure possibilities as weather threats exceed safety thresholds. Latest marine emergency. Coastal waters are becoming increasingly dangerous as multiple weather systems interact. Breaking news. This is now a developing weather emergency. Comment your location for immediate threat assessment. Urgent community alert. Ground truth reports are critical for tracking this rapidly evolving weather emergency. Breaking development. Northern Queensland observers must report conditions immediately for emergency coordination. Latest emergency protocol. Regional weather observers are now considered critical for tracking threat development. Breaking news updates continue. Follow this developing weather emergency as conditions rapidly deteriorate. This is breaking news. Overnight forecast analysis has revealed threat levels that exceed initial projections. Urgent development. Tropical system track changes bring dangerous weather closer to major population centers. Breaking alert. Emergency management agencies are activating crisis response protocols based on latest developments. Latest analysis. Current trajectory indicates impacts affecting millions of Australians across multiple states. Breaking news. State emergency coordination is now active as weather threats exceed individual response capabilities. Urgent flood alert. Rainfall projections now indicate major flooding that could overwhelm emergency response resources. Breaking development. Some communities could experience 300 to 400 millimeters rainfall, creating unprecedented emergency conditions. Latest infrastructure alert. Critical systems including hospitals and schools face power and communication failures. Breaking transport emergency. Major transport networks face complete closure scenarios, isolating communities. Urgent aviation alert. Airport emergency protocols are activating as weather conditions approach operational limits. Breaking news analysis. The critical question is now whether emergency preparations can match threat development speed. Latest development. Ocean temperature readings confirm optimal conditions for rapid tropical intensification. Urgent atmospheric alert. Conditions are becoming ideal for weather that exceeds emergency management capabilities. Breaking pattern analysis. Wind systems are organizing to create emergency shelter overflow scenarios. Latest emergency guidance. Pressure system positioning will determine final storm tracks and impact zones. Breaking development. Atmospheric pattern weakening could provide critical time for final emergency preparations. Urgent timeline update. The next 24 to 48 hours will determine whether Australia faces localised or widespread emergency. Breaking news. Tomorrow's emergency briefings will determine final evacuation and resource deployment decisions. Latest alert. Friday's analysis will activate either disaster response protocols or threat de-escalation procedures. This is breaking emergency guidance. Here's what emergency services recommend every Australian do immediately. Urgent preparation alert. Emergency preparations must begin now before conditions exceed community response capabilities. Breaking advisory. Far North Queensland residents should finalise evacuation plans and emergency supply deployment. Latest guidance. This represents emergency preparedness based on scientific analysis, not media sensationalism. Breaking protocol. Official emergency warnings will be issued through established channels when threats become imminent. Urgent reminder. Personal emergency preparation provides first defence when weather overwhelms community resources. Breaking news timeline. Here's your critical emergency schedule for Australia's most dangerous weather period. This weekend, breaking. Life-threatening severe weather across southeast Queensland and northeast New South Wales. January 20th to 25th. Breaking. Potential mass evacuation requirements as tropical threats peak. Breaking emphasis. This is emergency preparedness and community safety, not panic, but immediate action is critical. Urgent sharing request. Share this breaking emergency information with everyone. Preparation saves lives. Breaking engagement. Your sharing ensures emergency information reaches maximum people needing life-saving guidance. Latest community alert. Comments and shares help emergency information reach threatened communities. Breaking welcome. New emergency information. Followers join during Australia's most dangerous weather period. Urgent schedule. Tomorrow's emergency update focuses on immediate safety decisions and protective actions. Breaking Friday coverage. Critical analysis will address evacuation timing and emergency shelter requirements. Latest confidence update. Emergency forecast reliability improves once weather systems reveal actual destructive potential. Breaking historical context. Similar emergency patterns guide current preparation recommendations and resource positioning. Urgent capability update. Modern emergency management provides unprecedented protection, requiring community preparation. Breaking communication alert. Emergency networks and warning systems create multiple layers of life-saving information. Latest preparation emphasis. Your emergency readiness determines survival during dangerous weather ahead. Breaking purpose statement. Emergency weather forecasting prevents tragedy through early warning and preparation. Urgent analysis note. Detailed emergency coverage represents hours of study ensuring maximum community safety. Breaking support acknowledgement. Community engagement makes life-saving emergency analysis possible. Latest appreciation. Thank you for trusting emergency weather information during Australia's most dangerous period. Breaking continuation. Emergency updates continue as life-threatening conditions develop. Urgent closing guidance. Stay safe, stay prepared. Ensure loved ones know about approaching emergency conditions. Breaking final reminder. Until tomorrow's emergency update, immediate preparation saves lives when weather becomes life-threatening.